This is very anti-TikTok head. You know what I mean? This is sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry Bees. Coming at you with kind of a new set. Let me know what you think. But anyway, we are coming at you with one of my most anticipated releases of this year. If you've been following the channel for a while, or even if you haven't, a little while ago, I finally listened to Ethel Cain's Preacher's Daughter, and I just gotta say, it's one of the best albums that we've reacted to here on the channel. I know I usually don't talk about, well, this is like the best, or this is the greatest, or this is good, or this is bad. Most of the time, it's just what I like. You know, do I like this more than that? Did I have a good time with this? And Preacher's Daughter was a ride and a half. The narrative, the genre blending, the songwriting, you know, there were points within that album where I was like, is she like a Bob Dylan fan or something? I was just very privileged to have met Ethel Cain when I did, and have you guys along for the ride when that happened. And so when I heard that Ethel Cain was going to be dropping a new album, I was very excited to listen to it day one, but I was nowhere near my desk to react to it. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Today, we are reacting to Willoughby Tucker, I'll Always Love You. Now, Willoughby Tucker could be the character that we saw in the house in Nebraska, so to speak, in Preacher's Daughter. So maybe a kind of like a side story that's kind of becoming a larger focus here in this project. You know, it seemed that Preacher's Daughter was kind of the story of coming in and out of the church and maybe rebelling a little bit, and it all kind of culminates in this horror story, really. So I don't know what we're really getting into here, but just judging from the album title, maybe something a little bit more romantic, something a little bit more intimate than we found in Preacher's Daughter, but only time will tell, in the time that we have together here right now. This album was also front-loaded upon its release with some drama between Ethel Cain, Lana Del Rey, and then somehow Nicki Minaj entered the fight. And I've watched some videos about it since, and like I get it, and like I don't like Lana drops this diss track of sorts, but usually, at least in my experience, diss tracks are just dropped and then people talk about it. But she's like lip syncing to her own song, which is honestly like kind of thug. But I'm over here. I love both artists. We've reacted to both artists here on the channel, and I was like, girls, can we just be friends? Women help women. I don't know. Maybe that's not my place to speak. Maybe that's not my place to speak. But nonetheless, I think that's kind of given this album a little bit more anticipation for me. But more importantly than anything else, please let me know your thoughts on my thoughts as I react to this album. Make sure you like and subscribe so more people like you see this kind of content. More Ethel Cain nuts like you see this. If you ever want to catch us live, make sure you click one of the links down in the description. And if you ever want to see this reaction, or pretty much any other reaction that I've done here on the channel, go ahead and check out my Patreon, where you can get unedited videos before they come out on YouTube for just $1, plus some other kinds of content. I've been uploading some goofier kinds of content on my Patreon recently, and I'll continue to drip feed that, but you're gonna have to check to see that for yourself. This is it. This is the long-awaited follow-up for me. I know that there was an album in between, you know, this whole granddaughter kind of character for Ethel. I haven't really looked too much into the lore on that. I didn't listen to the Droning album, but this album, very excited for. Yeah, released earlier this month, 2025, August of 2025, 10 songs, hour and 13 minutes. We're in for a ride here, so sit tight. Let's just get it started. Let's just get it started here. First song, Janie.
Hold me, smell of mildew.
I've missed her so much.
I wanna die in this room. Please don't leave me. I'll always need more. Please leave open your
What the fuck? Okay. So that was the first track off of the album, and already really jiving with this one a lot. Some things that I really liked in Preacher's Daughter that we're finding here that that I'm kind of recognizing as maybe the Ethel Cain sound. These kind of reverby, but also kind of bright guitar tones. They're just so brilliant. And, it's a very slower paced song, but at that, she makes a 5-minute song go by really fast because time flies when you're having fun. And I had fun with this as an audience member, but also trying to pick the brains of Ethel as I'm reading the lyrics here. So it seems as though this is kind of coming out of that House of Nebraska, maybe another scene here, hold me, smell of mildew. I want to die in this room. And how this is, kind of affecting her, this love, this affection, or maybe just the scenario as a whole. It's a very physical, maybe involuntary kind of thing. I still shake just by nature. Now, what kind of confuses me, which is like, well, maybe not. I know she's your girl now, but she was my girl first. And I'm like, okay, what kind of happened? I'm trying to think about things, maybe just to see if this is a continuation of something from Preacher's Daughter narratively, but just trying to stay with the flow of things. And is this a Mr. Take Yo Girl, but it's your sister? So Aelid coming in here with a chat that says, if I remember correctly, the song is about Ethel's best friend, Janie, who got a boyfriend the summer that they turned 16. Since Janie was Ethel's only real friend, she feared this meant the end of their friendship. Ethel has all these insecurities, which is actually what leads to the drift, what leads the two to drift apart, since she feels Janie should just be up in front and leave Ethel. So that just kind of helps me wrap my head around things here narratively. Cut the cord properly rather than just keeping her at arm's length. Yeah, so it's more just like just rip the Band-Aid off, for God's sakes. Like this is just torture. It's not looking good, but did it ever? I think that says something maybe about Ethel herself, just in the way that she sees relationships or scenarios. Maybe there's the sense of perpetual foreboding. Another reason why I'm excited to get into this, because, there were a lot of interpretations and a lot of backstory and deep dives for Preacher's Daughter, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of the same kind of stuff here. But will it get as dramatic as, some of the soundscapes in Preacher's Daughter? I don't know. But I think here is where I'm going to try to stop comparing Preacher's Daughter to this album and just enjoy this album, because I do that way too goddamn much. But we're moving on. Willoughby's theme. So just real quick, maybe another sense of maybe how cinematic Ethel's kind of writing her music in. Willoughby's theme, maybe this is the overture, the score, perhaps. I agree. So that was Willoughby's theme, and I am just getting clean in the Ethel Cain sound bath today. I think one of the things that I really enjoy about, how much of a household name Ethel Cain has become. She's not the most well-known, but I think that she definitely gets a lot of credit and deserves a little bit more credit, at least for me. I think she's very underrated as far as how many people may not know who she is, but this sense of patience, this is very anti-TikTok head. You know what I mean? This is sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen. Just vibe with this. I think Pink Blue came in with a great interpretation here. Really love how the piano on this is played because it reminds them of the way the piano is tuned and played in Televangelism off of the last record, off of Preacher's Daughter, which represents Ethel's ascension into heaven. And given that this is Willoughby's theme, this can, represent maybe Willoughby's ascension to heaven, maybe that kind of parallel there between the two projects. And it just going to show that, Ethel's, phenomenal command of soundscapes and atmospheres and mixing. Okay, but we're going to move on here. Fuck Me Eyes. Apparently a single, but I haven't heard this one yet. Is it a single? I don't know.
She really gets around town in her own Cadillac, in her mom's jeans that she cut to really show off her ass. She's got her makeup done and her high heels on. She's got her hair up to God. She's gonna get what she wants. She goes to church straight from the clubs. They say she looks just like her mama. Before the drugs, she just laughs and says, I know. She really told me what to go. She's just along for the ride. She's scared of nothing but the passenger side of some old man struck in a dark parking lot. I take her out, but no one ever wants to take her home. Big white smile, pretty baby with the miles. And when she leaves, they never see her wipe and her fuck me eyes. Nowhere to go, she's just along for the ride. But no one ever wants to take her home.
I'm so happy right now. This is so good. Oh my lord. All right, so I don't know if I've ever said this explicitly before, but I'm going to say it now. I love Ethel Cain. I love Ethel Cain so much. I was actually kind of worried that we wouldn't get a popular, more accessible song off of this record. I think American Teenager off of Preacher's Daughter, that kind of stood in its own realm between the rest of the album. There was a little bit of genre hopping there, but in only the way that Ethel could do it. It was all tailored to Ethel's sound, maybe some more country Americana stuff, some like really like aggressive, even like electronic stuff like towards the end of the album there, and then obviously some of the staple atmospheric kind of soundscapes that kind of permeate through all of her songs here. But this goes back to something that I had found about her music, and I'm really excited to see it here, is how vividly she paints pictures in her lyrics, but not in a way that doesn't necessarily insult the audience's intelligence. It leaves room for subtlety and some nice wordplay. They want to take her out, but nobody wants to take her home, kind of a deal. She's no good at raising children. She's good at raising hell. And, all this talk about, going to the clubs, show off her ass. What does that mouth do? The Queen of the Holiday Inn, or Miss Holiday Inn, rather. So somebody who, at least to me in this song, is maybe trying to get validation from, sowing oats, as it were, is how we like to call it here on the channel without being too explicit. But even calls it out here, gets around town, that aspect of it. And, and there's the side of Ethel that, almost kind of it admires that about her, but that Ethel maybe will never be that kind enough to herself, that maybe, here's this other girl who, she's very maybe confident about herself sexually or maybe intimately, and that's just not something that Ethel can do. She can't really hang there. That's how I kind of interpret that. The song is about a classmate of Ethel's jealous of her and scared that Willoughby likes Holly instead of Ethel. Hayden said that Holly isn't actually prostituting herself at the motel as a 16-year-old. Ethel is just having internalized misogyny by regurgitating rumors she's heard about Holly. But eventually, she says no one wants to take her home. Ethel can finally see common ground between the two of them. Yeah, so it's this sense of like validation, but very short term. Not having those long-term gains, this sense of belonging, or just like connecting to somebody on a deeper level. She just wants to feel good right now. As heard in Gibson Girl, right? Yeah, I forgot the name of the song, but this does draw a lot of parallels to Gibson Girl in Preacher's Daughter. Yes, thank you for reminding me of the song name. So we move on. Nettles. So we did listen to this track on a paid reaction stream, I do believe. So I have heard this one. This one might be a review more than a reaction. But now that I can put it into the context of the album as a whole, we'll get into it.
But when the plant blew out, a piece of shrapnel flew and slowed that part of you. The doctors gave you until the end of the night, but not till daylight. For sure. Tell me all the time not to worry. Think of all the time I'll have with you when I won't wake up on my own. Wake up on my own. Lay me down where the trees bend low. Put me down where the greenery stings. I can hear you go fight a war. I'll go myself. I want you for me. It's not that hard. That picture on the wall you're scared of looks just like you. Wake up on my own. Wake up on my own. Helpless all the time. Now when I'm half of you. Think of us inside after the wedding. Gardenias on the town, where it makes no difference who are bad for
So I'm very glad I got to listen to this within the context of the album. Like I said, I have heard this song before, but it again, it's just so incredible the way that they use the instrumentation and, how they use the instrumentation to create this atmosphere. Because, we just came from like a synth heavy song before. Now we're into this. It's folkier, the violins, maybe we heard a couple mandolins in there, but just your regular ass acoustic guitars, and we drag it out even longer. But at no point, am I like, oh, okay, like when is this going to be over? I am just again, just I'm not even getting clean anymore. I'm just happily swimming in the sound bath at this point. And, I feel like, this song is, really peering into Ethel's head here, and again, please do let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. But my initial take with this, it's about Ethel's anxieties and fears really lay at the foundation of this song and maybe within this particular relationship here, because we're going through a few different, scenarios. And I don't know how much of this is factual, if this is all biographical, in a sense. A piece of shrapnel flew and slowed that part of you. And, there's a scene about being in the hospital, not making it through the end of the night to, possibly going, into war or something like that, and not seeing them again. So there's this constant fear of losing this person that you love. And I think, when you do love somebody, I think, there's this thought, it's a very baseline Buddhist kind of thought, but like everything is suffering. If you don't love somebody, your suffering is that, you don't have anybody to love. But if you love somebody, your suffering is that you have this person to love, and, that emotion kind of weighs on you because you don't want that to go away. And I think that's also just an incredibly human thing. But, there's this, self-deprecation, to where it's like Ethel's not even like really giving herself any grace for thinking like this. It's like, to love me is to suffer me, where it's almost like you can't even enjoy the time that you're having right now. I believe it's all scenarios made up in her anxiety brain. That's what it kind of gave me here. It's a weird love letter where it's like, I love you so much that if something happened where you weren't around, when I won't wake up on my own, where it's like, it sucks waking up on my own because I want you here. But at the same time, like, thinking of you not being here drives me up the fucking wall. Hold close all the time, knowing I'm half of you. So is it a dangerous road to kind of, where lines between maybe infatuation and love are kind of crossed, where, that kind of breaks your own self down, where you can't even enjoy the moment. And also in the chat here, there's talk of a book coming out, maybe some supplemental material to the narratives that are going on that maybe help us connect the dots a little bit. And again, I think that's just a testament to this kind of universe that Ethel and company have kind of built for themselves and for us, thankfully. So we move on. Willoughby's Interlude, maybe another, obviously, instrumental track here. On mushrooms right now, I'd be catatonic. All right, so we'll pause it here. We'll go back a little bit just to make sure that we catch everything, because I imagine that this will bleed into the next track that we're about to get into. But, I mean, I'll say this without it being a detriment at all. It is more of the same. It's more of the same that I like. It's still very atmospheric. This is calling upon, Willoughby's theme that we heard earlier in the album. But this is, like, giving me more, like, binaural beats. If anybody's like ever like gone into like meditating, I need like something most of the time. I don't meditate as often as I should. Even at base level, all you just need to do is just breathe a couple times and be present, and that kind of, centers me out a little bit. But if I just need like some kind of background music that isn't distracting to kind of center me and focus, I'd like put on like a 4-hour binaural beats video, or you just play this song 90 billion times in a row. And again, like towards the end of the song where we get those lower registers of sound, I don't know what's being done to get like that low kind of bassy sound there. But I mean, I'm all ears for it. I'm all ears. Now, I kind of have to be because, my ears are encapsulated into these headphones and I'm listening to this right now. So I kind of have to be all ears for it. It'd be really strange and almost impressive if I wasn't. Straight into Dust Bowl. Okay. So, dare I say that this is probably the most optimistic song so far? By the way, I mean, let's just call it what it is. Awesome. Love this one. For reasons I'm about to get into. So, I don't know. This, to me, this feels, this is, we kind of just got done talking about like being in the present moment. Maybe, Willoughby's Interlude was our way of kind of centering ourselves going into maybe this song, where they kind of seem to just be like enjoying each other's time, the only way that you can when you're at the drive-in. And besides from this brief point right here, when I rode home crying, think of you fucking other girls, when you said that you're in love, I never wondered if you're sure. So there is this sense of validation coming through. Now, let's just see where we are in the album as a whole. We're about halfway through. So to me, knowing, or at least from what I've come to expect, narratively, is this like a turning point? It hasn't really been a happy or necessarily sad story, more so just kind of, swimming in all this melancholy. Is Bad News Bears going to happen? Or is there going to be more tumult on our way? Because it does seem that this is like a brief glimmer of just, being happy kind of in the moment. And obviously this drop right around here, right around where your daddy smoked in Vietnam, was just absolutely terrific. To me, it's really the first time that we've listened to an album on the channel so far that's even remotely reminded me of Death Consciousness. And I may have even said that in my last Ethel Cain reaction. because I do see that there are parallels just between the atmosphere and this, like, these hard drops, like, out of nowhere that we got all throughout that album, and Death Consciousness being another one of my all-time favorite records that we've reacted to here on the channel. I do see some parallels there where it's just like, okay, hard, heavy, kind of shoegazy guitar coming in. And this is just me here. Does it say more about me than anything else? I don't know. But like Ethel, I had first known about Ethel Cain just from the whole like Gollum video that she made, you know. And so obviously I think that she's got a tremendous sense of humor. And I, like, there is this like brief glimmers of it where they're using this. I don't know if it's an effect on her voice or she's doing it herself, like on the vocals. By the way, the vocals in the song were fantastic, especially towards the end here where she's saying over me. I just loved how deep that was, you know, where it's like, right? So I don't know how much of that is done in post, whatever, but like...
that he smoked in Vietnam.
I don't know. To me, that's kind of funny. No, the Gollum video is hysterical. Knock at the door.
Staying in the state later. You with both your fists, and you're not scared of knock on the door. No one should ever see their friend. They've known since they were just kids. Found out and lighted on the floor. You never need to call my name, though I love it all the same.
I love the sound of fingertips moving along guitar strings. I don't know what it is. It's one of my favorite things. All right, so that's a knock at the door, and not really getting anything very apparent, which is fine. It's allowing me to think a little bit more. You know, Satan's in the state pen. You're here with both your fists, and you're not scared of no knock on the door. Bear with me a moment as I kind of catch myself up to speed here. You know, I just don't know how to interpret this knock on the door. Something Heisenberg, foam up and bite it on the floor. I think, you know, if anything, you know, coming from maybe more optimistic songs, or at least, you know, coming from Dust Bowl, which again, I said was maybe an optimistic kind of song where they're just kind of enjoying each other's time, having fun at the drive-in. Maybe a knock at the door just as an idea of there's something around the corner, you know. Everything I've loved it straight to death. So the inevitable end of something coming. You never need to call my name, though I love it all the same. I know you by your knock on the door. I don't know. This one's kind of got me up here a little bit. Reading Ayla's comment here. It's important to the story to learn that Ethel is questioning whether or not Willoughby is truly the one that will carry her out of the dark as she watches him fail to deal with the challenges of the real world, but she can't stop her idealization and propping him up in her mind. Last verse shows that Willoughby is not as strong as Ethel thinks he is. He has his own messed up background. Knock on the door as Reaper coming to take you. So, the fear or lack of fear in death. Okay, yeah. So maybe I was right in the sense that, you know, the knock on the door, something's around the corner, something not really ideal to keep this relationship going. Yeah, so we'll see how much further we fall from grace here, considering I feel like there was a very rapid descent with the last album So we'll keep this one going. I'm expecting maybe the same kind of pace, if you will, because that's kind of what it's been given me so far. About radio towers, Hayden said horror game safe room music was the inspiration behind this sound, while on tour she would later go on to specify Resident Evil safe room music. Wait, can I just like pull it up here real quick? If you know, you know. I've played this game more than any other game. Take me back to that first playthrough of Resident Evil 4 where I'm just sweating and I finally get to a typewriter to save my game. Just, Anyway, radio towers. And we'll keep this one rolling. We'll keep it rolling. Tempest. Oh, they can't do that. All right, so this part of the album has given me a lot to kind of think about, and if you've been reading the chat, there is a lot, and I kind of got to read what you guys are saying because you guys are writing fucking essays about all this. I will say, you know, earlier I said, you know, that's like a really quick 8-minute song or whatever it was, because like I'm enjoying the atmosphere so much, but it really has, this part of the album really has like slowed down for me quite a bit, and I think, you know, Radio Towers helps with that because it is so even keeled, and it was getting kind of like neutral tones from it, so it's not necessarily getting the same sense of foreboding that I necessarily got out of some of the other, not necessarily instrumental tracks, just like solidly instrumental, but you know, those larger sections of just soundscape. And with this, so Tempest, obviously, you know, I'm reading that this is coming from the perspective of Willoughby. And I will just say this, though, you know, I think there's enough here to kind of pick at and take from, but there is this differentiation that I would like to make, and even a criticism. Again, let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. You know, there's obviously a lot of talk on, well, this is what Hayden says is the case, or, you know, this is what maybe Ethel had kind of divulged, and that's what it's about. But at some point, you need this just to speak for itself, or for it to speak to you, right? So whatever your interpretations are with that. And so I'm kind of like reading the chat as it's coming, and I'm like, I think at some point you do kind of have to stop that and just look at it for like what it is. I think you can take the fact that this is from Willoughby's perspective, and I think at the very least gives you the sense that yes, they are not the hero, this, strong, idyllic partner to be with that Ethel thought, and that they are deeply flawed and maybe even self-destructive. Actually, especially self-destructive. They think about these songs that, yes, they have narrative behind them, but at the core, they tell a story that we can all relate to at some point, since many of us are out there and have dealt with something similar, this unhealthy relationship bound to fail because one or both of their parties are at fault. I do agree with you that I think the ambiguity of, this idea of the storm, the tempest, being the quote unquote end to Willoughby's story, or at least the story that pertains to Ethel. Sometimes not knowing is even scarier, especially in this album, in the sense of fear and anxiety, and not knowing fits into that way more than anything else. Now, does this get divulged into the book that's coming out? I don't know. I would like to see that stay ambiguous. I really would. It's like at the end of, if anybody's ever seen The Thing, it's actually one of my favorite examples of like ambiguity in story, really in any story, but especially in cinema, where if I won't spoil it, just because I do think it is a phenomenal film. The ending is so ambiguous in the best way possible, and it just leaves you wanting to know, but I think that's a really responsible thing for the artist, and in that case, David Cronenberg, the director of that adaptation, to leave it ambiguous, to let maybe the audience decide, or to leave them with that sense of ambiguity and to leave a lasting impact or feeling after you've watched it. So, so a lot of movies or albums, or even just like pieces of art, you can look at it and go like, oh, okay. And then maybe you move on, you watch another movie, you listen to a different song, but it's that lasting impact. So in this case, it's the ambiguity, the anxiety of not knowing what's happened, I think is a telltale sign of really something great that's been created. About her music, though, even that there is clear intended lore, you really generally cannot see that in the plain text. I agree. Well, and so you say like Janie and Fuck Me Eyes being about two completely new characters. I think going back to that relatability point, I think you wouldn't even have to see it as a narrative to at least relate to, if that's not who you are. People like this. You've seen scenes of this before in your own life. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But if you have, it's that much more, again, gratifying. All right, so we are here at the conclusion of Willoughby Tucker, I'll Always Love You. Next song, Waco, Texas. Nothing bad has ever happened in Waco, Texas. Shout out Urban Rescue Ranch, doing God's work, literally. So allow us to continue here, to conclude here. 15 minutes. Strap in, folks.
My honey's heart is blue and a second of bed. Always tugging at me like he's running out of daylight. But then the morning comes. You were there looking for
my God. That last note. I know, 15 minutes long, and I'm hung up on the last note. Utterly heartbreaking. I'm giving applause to being utterly heartbreaking. I think in it's most simplistic. I think you can look at the title of the last track, Waco, Texas. Obviously, I had joked. Maybe not something to joke about. My apologies. But nonetheless, the tragedy in Waco, Texas with the Branch Davidians, meeting their demise by the government, I think acts as a decent little parallel to what we're seeing. In my interpretation, this is, Ethel's infatuation and love for this person is that of cultish fervor, which ultimately ends in tragedy. In this case, a little bit more one-sided, as it's not very clear what happens to Willoughby, only that Ethel doesn't have Willoughby. And that in and of itself is the tragedy. So there's no resolution to it. It's laying in this heartbreak. And I think the instrumentation alone gives that off. But as, held in my arms, I'd swear it'd be good. Oh, wait, no. Where's something about holding in your arms, but maybe facing away from you. And then, just given the album cover here, I think it is really telling it in a really smart lyric when you're looking at it. Cause maybe either that person isn't showing you their true self, or you're just kind of refusing look at them in that way where you just need them by you. Just the fact that they're by you is enough. And that gives you more, where maybe that's a little bit one-sided there. I don't know if we've had as much interpretation from the chat. Again, thank you for everybody in the chat, and maybe even you in the YouTube comments. You're giving your interpretations and things that I wouldn't have caught. I don't have a lot of experience interacting with Ethel's music, even though Preacher's Daughter did leave me with a lasting impact. But all the parallels between this song and that song, calling back to I Still Believe in Nebraska Dreamin', and how that's even called upon towards the end of Preacher's Daughter, and obviously, House in Nebraska being a real hallmark kind of a song. Again, this goes to the point that I kind of brought up earlier. There's so much for you to get at just by listening to this, but interacting with a lot of the supplemental content, or, maybe things coming straight from the source, from Queen Ethel Hayden themselves, ladies and gentlemen. So, I was going to say some things about that last song, but this tie that into other songs in the album. I think that this is as good of a transition as any to give my conclusion. I mean, it's Ethel Cain. It's Ethel Cain. I will say, I didn't get as much out of this as Preacher's Daughter. Preacher's Daughter was just crazy. But that's not to say that I didn't like this, or there weren't things to like, because I think I did like this a lot, and there's a lot to like out of this. So again, we're getting just standard Ethel Cain sound, the soundscapes, the atmosphere, the mixing, the vocals, all of that's true. It's more of what I wanted, and I got it. And some things that I was surprised with, knowing that Perverts was more of a droning, very atmospheric, very instrumental. I wasn't necessarily, expecting songs like Fuck Me Eyes, or even really songs like Dust Bowl, which were a little bit more optimistic. Obviously, Dust Bowl's really optimistic, but Fuck Me Eyes, I guess you could say it might be kind of a jam to listen to, even though maybe the subject matter in and of itself isn't, the happiest or anything. But I don't think you come to Ethel Cain to be especially happy. The latter half of this album, after Dust Bowl, does call upon the audience a little bit more, not necessarily in a bad way. And I think, always understand that I'm coming at these reactions with a certain set and setting. I mean, I guess the setting never changes until I put this shit up. You know, I did have to take, you won't see this on the YouTube video, I did have to take a quick break just to get something to eat because I was pretty hungry. So maybe if I had a more full stomach, I would have been a little bit more engaged. But there's also, like, I mean, Radio Towers is like a 5-minute, you know, with like low beat boops here and there. And obviously the longer tracks themselves serve as a lot of space for those soundscapes, right? And that's things that I'm coming to expect from Ethel Cain, and it's maybe not as exciting as being cannibalized as we found in Preacher's Daughter. But with Waco, Texas, I think it was an extremely, extremely strong ending because, I mean, I'm not like crying, but I mean, halfway through the song, I'm like, this is heartbreaking, you know, and it, like I said, it's that ambiguity. I think not knowing what happens to Willoughby, and I don't even care, you know, as much as I like it, I don't care whatever comes out in that book if we find out more about what happens, because to me, it's melancholy, it's anxiety, it's not knowing, and for me, the way I'd wish to interact with it, maybe I'm nerfing myself within this. I think that's absolutely perfect. Especially, you know, in that line about like, oh, I'm picking like out our kids' names and like, oh man. And also seeing this other side of Ethel. So not necessarily as maybe as self-destructive as we saw in Preacher's Daughter outright, but self-destructive in the sense where, you know, nothing's good is going to come from how you're interacting with this relationship, right? How, you know, you're idolizing somebody. You're looking at it really with rose-colored glasses and maybe not seeing them for who they were. And, you know, is there some lament in the sense that, you know, maybe if I would have, you know, treated them differently, maybe they would still be here or something like that. And again, those are more things that we can relate to within the music, to where maybe you don't need the grandiose narrative of everything. You look at it for what it is, and I think you still get quite a bit out of it. I think at the end of Preacher's Daughter, it was very fitting that I gave it, the only time I've ever done this on the channel, I gave it the masterpiece tag. And there's a handful of albums that we've listened to since, or a handful of albums that we've listened to before that album that I think I would have given that tag to, and I don't really think I've given it since. This is still very good, though. Obviously, it's quite subjective. It's only me here, and I am an idiot. So again, please do let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. This was still one hell of a ride, and I am, if anything, very satisfied by this release. It was anticipated. It did not let me down. It gave me everything I wanted, and I think that's the least you could ask for. So that was my reaction to Willoughby Tucker, I'll Always Love You. Like I said, that was a very anticipated release for me. It did not disappoint, but please, I'll say this again and again in all of my videos, please do let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. If you want to join the chat, if you want to join the conversation live as it's happening, make sure to click one of the links down in the description. And if you never want to miss any of my reactions, go ahead and check out my Patreon, where you can get exactly that for $1 a month and pretty much everything else I've ever done. But with all that said, I've been Jerry Bees. You've been awesome. Take it easy.
Diggity dog. Breaking. Diggity dog. Shark. Breaking.